Hello coffee roasters, and thanks for watching this screencast. Today we're going to have a very quick look at how to cup a series of roasts, otherwise known as a flight in the coffee world, where you set out and pour a range of samples and evaluate and score each one together. Now you may actually already be familiar with the process of cupping in Roastmaster, and there are several different ways you can create new cuppings, the most straightforward of which is to navigate to the cuppings list, then tap the add button at the bottom, and Roastmaster gives you a brand new cupping. From here you can tap add item and then choose any one of your roasts or blends to evaluate. What you might not know though is that you can also select a range of roasts and create a flight of cuppings very quickly. So let's navigate back to our roast list. And here, let's pause for a second and talk about the concept of aggregate actions in Roastmaster. Let's select this first roast here, and we can see in the details view we have an array of bar button items at the bottom. And tapping any one of these will perform a certain action on this particular roast. For instance, if I tap the labels button, I can tap generate labels, and I have one label laid out on a label sheet for this particular roast. But I can also go into the roast list here and put it into edit mode. And you can see that the interface has changed a little bit in this list. I can now tap multiple items and select an array, and from there our toolbar at the bottom has also changed. We now have a labels button down here, so if I tap that and then tap generate labels, I've created several sheets of labels consisting of every roast that I selected. So we'll go ahead and tap the done button here at the top of the list, and that returns the list into standard browsing mode. Now this functionality exists in several places in Roastmaster, and it's pretty powerful. So we're going to use that same type of aggregate selection to select a series of roasts that we have from a few days ago of Ethiopian Yirgacheffe, and we're going to perform a flight of all 6 samples. So we'll put the table into edit view mode again, then select each of our 6 roasts. Then in the bottom toolbar we'll tap the flight button, and Roastmaster shows us a list of protocols that we can use for these cuppings. We'll choose SCAA and then tap done. Now if we navigate back to cuppings, we can see that Roastmaster has given us all of these cuppings already configured with each roast of our Ethiopian. From here, all we need to do is tap the edit button and then select each one of our 6 new cuppings. Now, the important part of this process is that Roastmaster remembers the order in which you select these. Now, this is very important when you're cupping a flight because the SpiderGraph interface that you're going to score with does not show any of the details of the beans or the roast. It just shows you the country of origin. So you're going to want to select these in the same order that you've laid out the samples on the table so that you can start with sample 1 and just move straight down the line. And finally, in the bottom toolbar, we'll tap the flight button again. And Roastmaster presents us with a full screen containing all 6 samples and a few controls here that we can use as we cup. Now the first thing we'll do is tap the stopwatch icon here in the bottom toolbar. That'll give us a running stopwatch up top that's going to help us as we go. Then we just need to evaluate our coffee and score each attribute by tapping and dragging along these axes. Well, let's just go ahead and give this, let's say 92. We're being very generous today with this fictitious cupping. So that is sample 1. Now the intricacies of cupping, we'll save those for a later screencast. We're just making this nice and simple here. So we'll say we have sample 1 done. Now we have 2 means of navigation in this SpiderGraph view. We have a set of arrows near the bottom, and we have a slider. So we'll go ahead and tap the bottom right arrow, That gets us to sample 2, and we can score it. Now the slider comes in very handy if you want to pan back and forth between scores, especially when you're reviewing the end results and you can see how each attribute has changed between the samples. So we won't go through scoring the rest. We'll just go ahead and dismiss this. And that's all there is to it. So you've seen now how quickly and easily that you can create a flight of cuppings and evaluate them. Let's look a little bit about how some of this data can help you get the most out of your roasts. So back in the home menu, we'll tap on Reports, then choose our report type, and we want roast log. For range, let's put this week. Our grouping and sorting are fine, so is metric 1. Let's change metric 2 to duration and keep its tally as an average. Then we'll tap Create Report. And finally, we want to see this data in an interactive graph, so we'll tap the graph button down here in the totals bar. And Roastmaster shows us a graph of the development time and duration times of these 6 roasts. Now the fun part and the ultimate reward for keeping all of this good cupping data. If we tap the cupping icon down here in the toolbar, then we can also see the cupping scores that we just entered overlaid onto this data. And if we tap and drag our finger around, we can look at this data more closely and see individual nodes and their values as they're represented on the graph. So here we have our development time, and we can tap and look at our duration. And finally, again, the most fun part is seeing how the cupping scores have been affected by these variables. So there's a lot that you can do with reports, and we're going to save the details of that for a later screencast. The purpose of this one was just to let you know how to quickly cup a series of roasts so that it's easy to do and that you'll get in the habit of doing this because this data is invaluable in Roastmaster. So thanks for watching, and be sure to check back often for future screencasts on how to get the most out of using Roastmaster.